Hey everybody, welcome back. This video is about the sentence, which yeah, you might say, I know all about sentences and how to create them, but let me tell you, I see a lot of sentences that are not complete, not proper grammar, and that creates problems of understanding. So if we want to have great communication, we need to know some of the basics, which is how do you make a complete sentence? So let's do it. And specifically, I want to talk about sentence fragments today. So what are the parts of speech? Grammar is like the blood and guts of speech and language. It's the parts, right? It's the subject, the verb, adjectives, adverbs, pronouns, etc. And just like doctors know the parts of the human body so they can operate, well, writers need to know the parts of speech to help you identify when these parts are used incorrectly, how they go together, how you can maybe combine them in different ways. So let's learn about the parts so we can understand how the whole comes together. So what's a fragment? Hopefully you know that it's shards, it's pieces, it's something that's incomplete. A fragment is, the edge of a torn piece of paper. It's, the half a map that, the treasure map. So let's try to figure out how we make a complete sentence. Now, how do we talk? Most people are using sentence fragments day to day, throughout the day. That's fine. In a normal context like that, we don't need to be having proper grammar in every single minute of our day. So interaction with your buddy might go like this. Hungry? Yeah. Got class? Nah, going home. In a hurry? Yeah. So, those are pretty much all sentence fragments. In a hurry is a complete sentence. But most of them are not complete sentences. So we don't want to write like the way we speak. Remember about tones and gestures from another lecture. We understand what the two people in that interaction were talking about, right? But someone from another country might not. Someone from, that's not as old as you might not, a younger person. So you've left out many words here which actually hurt comprehension. People are not going to understand you if you speak in sentence fragments all the time, especially if you write that way. Because when we write, we lose the tone. We lose tone of voice. We lose gestures. You just have the words on the page or the email. So to hear something is very different from reading it. We lose those tones and gestures that help us comprehend sentence fragments. So in order to make up for that loss of tone and gesture, we just use complete proper sentences. You see this all the time, even in professional businesses. Mr. Lube, doing it right before your eyes, right? 2 sentence fragments there. Ready for a change? Yep, sentence fragment. Warranty approved service. No appointment necessary. Yeah, all are sentence fragments, and it's a massive company that is doing this. So for advertising purposes, it doesn't matter. Probably working for them. But when we're writing in class, we're going to use complete sentences because it's the best for communication. So sentence fragments are not a make or break problem. We can change them into complete sentences usually quite easily. How do we do that? Well, first of all, let's spot the camouflage fragments. If you have a whole list of sentence fragments, it's going to sound really wonky. It's going to be very hard to understand fully what the writer is saying. But if you have a sentence fragment in between 2 proper sentences, often the sentence fragment goes unnoticed, right? Because it now makes sense in the context of the sentences around that piece. But if we want to do this properly, we got to have every sentence as a complete sentence. So let's take a look. Spot the fragments here. All my friends, period, want me to get an Xbox One, but I don't know if I'm ready for a new system. While everybody raves about new games, I'm still trying to finish games for the Xbox 360. Because there were so many games, I never got around to playing. Maybe I'll get a new system next year. A better decision anyway, since it might be less expensive by then. Now, the average person will probably get a good idea of what you're trying to say, yes? But this is very hard to read because it's riddled with sentence fragments or incomplete sentences. All my friends, it's not really a complete sentence here. What about them? What about all your friends? Want me to get an Xbox One, but I don't know, Not a complete sentence. You're starting with want me to get. Well, who does? So let's identify those fragments. Basically, it's almost everything. The only 2 complete sentences in that passage were, I'm still trying to finish games for the Xbox 360. Yeah, proper sentence. Or maybe I'll get a new system next year. That is a proper assertion. It's a proper sentence. So let's fix that. All my friends want me to get an Xbox One, but I don't know if I'm ready for a new system. Beautiful. We have a sentence there. While everybody raves about new games, I'm still trying to finish games for the Xbox 360. Perfect sentence. There's a while everybody raves, I'm still trying. There's two parts to that sentence, but it is a complete sentence. Because there were so many games I never got around to playing, right? If you stop there, the sentence doesn't make sense. But if we continue, because then maybe I'll get a new system next year. A better decision anyway, since it might be less expensive by then. What is this here? That long line? That's called an M dash. That's a way to simply think of it as a pause. You're taking a breath in your speaking, and when you're reading, it's just a pause as well. So it's a helpful tool, kind of like a semicolon. What causes fragments? Okay, so I think we did in a previous lecture the structure of a sentence. So if a sentence lacks a subject, it can become a fragment. If it lacks a verb or an action word, it can become a fragment. Or it's using what's called a subordinator. So that's some term you're going to want to remember for the test. But let me explain that to you. So review. What is a sentence? It's a subject, Professor Mike, plus a verb, recorded the lecture. Professor Mike recorded the lecture. That's a full sentence, right? It has a subject, which is me, and the action word, the verb, which is recorded. And there you go. That's as simple as I can explain it. A complete sentence has a subject and a verb. Boom. The subject is what it's about, and the verb tells us what the subject does or is, right? And a verb can be something like a to be. So here, for example, fire burns. The subject is fire. Think of that as a tangible thing usually. And the verb is burns. That's what's the action that's happening, right? Your house is burning down. Whales, subject, swim, verb. Dogs are, that's the to be verb, right? They are amazing creatures, right? All right, carrying on here. So what's the subject? It's always a noun, which is a thing, essentially, for lack of a better word, or a pronoun. Pronouns are used to describe nouns like he, him, her, it, they, right? A noun is a person, place, or a thing, generally, right? A person, Professor Mike. A place, Fanshawe College. A thing is your test, while a pronoun is a word that takes the place of a noun. So Professor Mike sings, or you replace that with he sings. All right, now we have a pronoun instead of a noun. Hope that's making sense. So examples. Homer is the noun. His pronoun is he, right? In a world of where pronouns are quite important, I hope all of you understand this intuitively. Marge is a she, right? Sentences without a subject. So for example, here's a sentence that is not right. From morning until night. Imagine someone came and said that to you without any context. They walk into a room and say from morning until night. You're like, well, what do you mean? What about from morning till night? Well, you can fix it by saying I worked from morning until night. Give us something more, right? Now you have a verb in the sentence, which is great. Another sentence that's a fragment, which certainly explains the entire problem. No problem. If that came out of the blue to you, you would not know what to do with that. Which explains the entire problem. What explains the problem? Here's a better way to do this. Jack was late, which certainly explains the entire problem. Okay, great. Now we have a subject in both of these. Beautiful, we fixed it. Now, if you have a sentence without a verb, here's one. The goat near the fence. What about the goat near the fence, right? We need to know what's the verb. What's the goat doing? The goat near the fence ran from the lion, right? There's your verb, ran. Perfect. Now we have a subject, goat, and the verb, ran. Another one. Your new car. Okay. Yeah, I mean, what's missing here? What about it? Your new car. If someone came and said to you, your new car. Well, if they said your new car is on fire, now you're getting something, right? Okay, now we have the verb, which is basically on fire. That's the action. So here's a picture that will kind of help you remember this, this rule of thumb, right? If you walk into a room and say something like, For example, fruits like grapes, bananas, and apples. Is that a complete sentence? Well, to answer that, ask yourself, does this make sense if you walk into a room and just say it to somebody? Of course not. If someone said this to you, you'd be like, what are you talking about? It doesn't make any sense. So this is the ultimate fragment test, or what I call the UFT. Does your sentence make sense on its own, right? If it does, you probably have a complete sentence, right? And don't just answer that question based on how you think it works in everyday speech. Would this work for someone who's just learning the English language? Would this work for someone who's 5 years old? If it doesn't make sense to them, it's probably not a complete sentence. So here I'm going to throw a couple terms at you, but don't be scared. They're simple in reality. So a clause. What's a clause? Just a group of words. Okay. A sentence is a clause. Now, an independent clause is just another name for a complete sentence. Why is it independent? Because things that are independent can stand on their own, right? They don't need anything else to complete them. They're independent, great, like people. But a dependent clause is just another way of saying a sentence fragment. Why is it dependent? Because it's depending on something else, and that something else is missing, right? It's either lacking a subject or a verb, or both in some weird instances. So we're shooting for independent clauses here. We want our writing to be full of them. We don't really want to have any dependent clauses sitting by themselves. Now, we do come up with dependent clauses, and we can fix them by just joining them to an independent clause. So how can we do that? We use a subordinator, right? A subordinator is just a group of words. It's certain types of words that change independent clauses. So something like, a full sentence. If you were to add although before that complete sentence. So here's an example from Arnold Schwarzenegger. The famous line, "I'll be back," right? If you were to say although I'll be back, it takes that complete sentence. I'll is the subject, and be is the verb. I'll be back. Complete sentence. Short one, but it's proper. But if you add although in front of that, just read it out. It doesn't make sense. Although is a subordinator. So let's do some examples on this. Yeah, and I think we know what subordinate means. To make secondary less important, right? To put it underneath something else. Subordinator. There are different types. So there are subordinators that relate to time, right? Relationships of time. So as, after, until, when, whenever. If you stick these words in front of a complete sentence, now you've broken it. Now you've made it an incomplete sentence, a sentence fragment, or AKA a dependent clause. Or subordinators can be words of relationships. Although, as if, in order that, since, whether, okay? If sentences begin with these words, they probably don't make sense unless you're adding something at the end, right? They tell us to expect more. So if Arnold is saying, although I'll be back, you're waiting for something else after that, right? It doesn't make sense. You're left hanging. So if it sounds like you're left hanging, you might have an incomplete sentence or a fragment. A great acronym for this, right? This is a memory tool. Wasabi. You don't know wasabi paste? That spicy green stuff that comes with some of your food sometimes. Wasabi, here's a list of words. So W is for while. While I like pizza, all right? That sentence doesn't make sense. So while can cause problems. Although I like pizza, again, not a complete sentence. Since I like pizza, as long as I like pizza, because, and if. So while, although, since, as, because, if, or in other words, they spell out wasabi, the first letters. These are the most common ones, the most common subordinators. So please remember this acronym, memorize it, memorize the words associated with wasabi, and you might see this on a test somewhere. So how do you fix a fragment or an incomplete sentence? Well, you can join a dependent clause or a fragment with an independent clause, right? If it's independent, and you bring on a dependent clause, perfect. It's probably still going to be a complete sentence as long as it's formed correctly. So here's a bad sentence. Although I love pizza, period. Although I love pizza, that's not a complete sentence, right? The next one, I hate mushrooms. Well, actually, that's a complete sentence. Hate is the verb and mushrooms is the subject. So although I love pizza, period, I hate mushrooms. How do we fix this? Just change the period to a comma. Now it's fixed, right? Because we had a complete sentence or a independent clause with a dependent clause, incomplete sentence. If we join the two, hey, fixed automatically. That's the simplest way to fix the situation. So now we have, although I love pizza, I hate mushrooms. Boom, sentence fixed. Here's another little South Park memory technique to remember: independent clause and dependent clause. They're better together, okay? They're whole together. So continuing on, I've got a little bit of work for you now. Let's try this on our own. Normally we do this in class and you get a sweet bonus mark, but today, you know, we're just recorded. So I'd like you to, if you are up for it, pause the video after I show you the sentence fragment. Try to fix it on your own, okay? So first one. That magazine publishes great photos, although its articles are often horrible. How do we fix this? Pause it and try it on your own, and then we'll continue. So what's the way to fix this? That magazine publishes great photos, although its articles are often horrible. We just deleted the period, right? You could put a comma there, I think, as well. And although is one of those subordinators, right? So you can't start a sentence with that and then not end it with something else. This is not a complete sentence, but the second bullet is. Great, fix. Next one. Coach Madden exemplified this behavior by walking off the field, period. Leaving his team at a time when they needed him most. You see the problem? It's this sentence is not proper, right? This is a fragment. It's a dependent clause. So how do we fix it? Pause, try it on your own. All right. So here we go. Coach Madden exemplified this behavior by walking off the field, comma, leaving his team at a time when they needed him most. Perfect. Look, this may seem basic to some of you, but unfortunately, a lot of the work that I get and other teachers get is riddled with these sentence fragments. It's probably one of the most common problems that we see. And so that's why we're doing this lesson, you know, in one of the very first weeks, because we have a lot of writing coming up. I would like for you to write in complete sentences, avoid the fragments. Number 3, Facebook, our number one pastime. It's ruining our lives, right? It's ruining our lives is one of those incomplete sentences. So to fix it, just do comma and is ruining our lives, okay? The first sentence here, Facebook, our number one pastime, what's happening there? There's no verb. So how can it be a complete sentence? It can't. Next one, I need to go to the grocery store, period. Okay, that's actually a good sentence. Because I promised I'd get milk. Now you have a problem because it's leading with a subordinator. Even though we rarely use it. Again, that sentence is a little wonky. So pause, try it on your own. Okay. I need to go to the grocery store because I promised I'd get milk, comma, even though we rarely use it. See, we've just joined all of these fragments together, and now it works. Hopefully this makes intuitive sense, but it's now becoming clear, I hope, because we're getting into the nuts and bolts. Last one. My grandmother always likes to take chances, period, especially with extreme sports. Okay, if you want to pause it, try it on your own. The problem here is my grandmother always likes to take chances, period. That's actually fine. Fine sentence. Here's the problem, especially with extreme sports. That sentence on its own is incomplete. It's not independent. So to fix it, my grandmother always likes to take chances, comma, especially with extreme sports. Now, see what we've done there? We combined the incomplete sentence with the complete sentence, added a comment, it's fixed. Great. Okay, that's it for now. I'll go on to the next video in a moment. See you there.